Bitcoin is absolutely fascinating because it lets us see the world through the prism of Bitcoin. If you see Bitcoin merely as a means of accumulating wealth, then honestly, just losing interest and quietly buying and collecting it, I think that's a good approach too. If you're willing to wait about 6 years, I believe it'll give you much better returns, far better than your regular savings. That's all well and good. But as I wrote in my book, Bitcoin is one of the most profound intellectual phenomena of our time. So viewing the world through Bitcoin is endlessly intriguing because Bitcoin reminds us of the essence of what a monetary phenomenon really is. That's why in our first session, we talked about the intrinsic value that economists always mention. Why do we need it? Why does money have to be physically tangible? Why does it need the government's approval? Even a gold bar on the moon that I can never retrieve can still function as money. That's the argument I laid out. So I take the claims of mainstream economists, and it's quite satisfying to dismantle them one by one. So I tell my students, to find the logical flaw, there isn't one. That's how I approach it. So looking at the world through the lens of Bitcoin is just incredibly thrilling and fun, though I may not feel quite as exhilarated as I did back then. Back in 2014, I was completely consumed by this excitement on my own. I was so wired that I couldn't sleep for months, and even today. Looking at US-China tensions through the lens of Bitcoin is absolutely fascinating. Not to mention how sensitive it is from an investment perspective. Bitcoin is also widely used by North Korea, which creates its own set of geopolitical challenges. These are facts. That's why we also need to think seriously about the Americano blockchain. The anarchist blockchain is important, yes, but now the Americano blockchain is becoming just as critical. Over the past 9 years, I've seen powerful but foolish people with power and no insight, rise far too high. But after using ChatGPT, I realized something. In the Korean education system, people who manage to pass exams that are harder than anything ChatGPT could answer have climbed their way up and are now sitting in decision-making positions. It's concerning these people who lost the ability to question. People who've gone through school without ever wondering, a horse pooped, how do we clean it up? Those are the ones who will have no thoughts about what might change in the age of electric vehicles. When such people are making decisions at car companies, it's a tragedy, truly a tragedy. So many opportunities have been lost. That's how I evaluate people, whether they judge others by shallow labels or not. And as expected, a lot of people who had no business getting involved in Bitcoin came into this space that's so innovative, so progressive, so forward-looking. At best, they bring nothing more than their own biases. Thinking, what do he really know? He was just a writing tutor. They try to make sense of the world through a lens like that. That was one of the biggest reasons I was rejected for 9 years. So intentionally, because I have no insecurity about it. In fact, I'm grateful for it. I throw it out there sometimes just to see. Will they buy it or not? And it turns out they do. But the real reason I turned on this camera to talk to you is this. Regardless of Bitcoin's price, more and more people are reaching out to meet me. Seriously impressive people. I don't know if it's because their perspectives have changed or because I just hadn't found them before. All those flashy labels, and the ones that seem like they can't even answer questions better than ChatGPT. Those credentials don't matter one bit. What matters are the things I seem to know. Things that ChatGPT doesn't know, and maybe only I do, that's what they're coming for. One by one, people are starting to come to me for that. And I think it's a very promising trend. It took 9 years to get here. And it wasn't purely about my skills. A lot of it was thanks to people like you. Here and there, I received real help along the way. When I think about it, I haven't changed. People misunderstand that. One of my students even said to me, "It's strange, you've been saying the same things for years. So why is everyone suddenly paying attention now?" I don't get it. That's what my student said. But it's true, I've been saying the same thing for the past 9 years. In my books too. That's just how it is. I haven't changed. Whether people take an interest in the ideas I put forward, whether they actually listen. And that's not really up to me. And that humbles me, because there's very little I can control. The Bitcoin phenomenon is hard to grasp, unless you're willing to break down what you thought you knew. Otherwise, it's nearly impossible to see it clearly. And those who shaped your current way of thinking weren't even smarter than ChatGPT. They just succeeded within a system that deeply rewards that kind of thinking. Sure, their discipline may be admirable from a meditative or ascetic standpoint. But whether their path actually benefited themselves, their families, or society, that's still an open question, especially in the age of ChatGPT. You need to keep in mind that that's the system that produced most of today's so-called successful people. What's overwhelming about Bitcoin is that the confusion and noise surrounding it are usually created by elites. That's still true. So unless you actively remove those tinted glasses, unless you break free from the comforting labels you think keep you safe, you'll miss out in a big way. And yes, there will be consequences. I know because the person punished most severely was me. That's why I'm saying this. When I heard a young man named Vitalik give a talk at 19 years old, I made a certain judgment about him and ended up missing out on an opportunity to earn 1,000 times or even 2,000 times. That's why I keep pleading with you. Please step out of your comfort zone. I hope that you gently step into this exciting, bold, progressive, and revolutionary space of thought. That's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.